The desert stretched endlessly under the dim light of twin suns, one crimson, one pale gold, their rays casting long, distorted shadows over jagged stone formations and clusters of wiry vegetation that pulsed faintly with bioluminescence. Wind whispered low across the sands, disturbed only by the crunching steps of four figures who moved with deliberate caution, their exosuits whispering with each shift. Commander Yurik led the way, a tall, mantis-like being with elongated limbs and silver-etched plating across his thorax. His many-faceted eyes scanned the terrain with disciplined efficiency, antennae twitching slightly whenever his sensory scanner pulsed. Beside him, tech specialist Valari trudged through the sand, more compact in form, her three-finger hands constantly adjusting a spherical interface drone that hovered beside her like a loyal pet. The other two, twins Kor and Fun, served as scouts, lean and sharp-eyed, their mirrored faces offering no readable emotion, only readiness. They had traveled light years on a salvage expedition from the Varn Prime Consortium, responding to a faint, irregular signal intercepted from this desolate quadrant, a blip that repeated every 87 seconds with mechanical precision, too symmetrical to be natural, too faded to be recent. Most of their colleagues dismissed it as a decayed echo, but Yurik's instincts twitched the moment he saw the signal pattern. It wasn't just a call. It was a rhythm, a beacon, possibly a warning. The source had led them here, to this empty stretch of what had once been an ocean, now reduced to dried ripples and scorched dunes. As they crested another ridge, Volari's drone let out a sharp whine and dropped a few meters, hovering near the ground, its lights pulse green. "Localized spike," Valari said, voice filtered through her helmet's comms. Something metallic just beneath the surface. Large. Yurik raised a clawed hand, signaling the others to spread out. The sand beneath them was oddly firm, giving way with unnatural consistency as though compacted by something massive. Kor knelt, brushing away fine particles, and froze. Fun moved beside him and hissed low. A sliver of dark brushed metal reflected the sunlight. Too symmetrical, too clean to be geological. They spent the next 30 minutes clearing the surface layer, revealing a portion of what appeared to be a hull, curved, matte black, streaked with faint etchings and no known script. A series of vents or exhaust ports lined one side, but they were fused shut, worn by time or heat. It wasn't just buried. It had been here for a long time. "This isn't Varnian," Valari murmured, running her scanner across the surface. "Composite alloy. Not in any of our databases." Kor muttered something in their native dialect. Fun answered with a short click, his weapon tightening in his hands. "It's a vessel," Yurik said simply. "Old. Possibly older than anything we've cataloged in this sector." "Why here?" Valari asked. "Why no distress signal? No sign of battle. Impact. It's just sitting here." "Waiting," Kor said quietly. They found an ingress point near the starboard curve, half collapsed but passable. The ship's airlock groaned open with an unnatural fluidity, exhaling a breath of stale, processed air that reeked faintly of ozone and something else. Something faintly organic. Valari recoiled. Kor and Fun activated internal lights on their suits. The interior was vast, silent. The walls curved inward, ribbed like the inside of a living creature's throat. Tubes ran along the ceiling, pulsing dimly. The floor was coated in a thin layer of dust, but no debris, no signs of struggle. Everything was intact. Still, as if paused in the middle of something. Yurik's voice came low through the channel. "Stay alert. This is no ordinary wreck." The deeper they moved, the more the ship seemed to hum faintly around them. Not sound, vibration, like a heartbeat, felt through their boots, subtle but unmistakable. Volari's drone began to twitch erratically, flickering between scanning modes. It pinged something down a side corridor and then abruptly shut off. No power. No warning. "Not a malfunction," she said quietly, pocketing it. "Interference." They found the bridge, or something resembling it, toward the center. A wide, domed chamber, walls embedded with smooth panels that reflected distorted images of their own movements. At the far end, a semicircular console faced a wall of dormant screens. One flickered as they entered. Then another. A soft, violet glow pulsed across the room like a breath catching in the throat. This shouldn't be possible, Valari said. The power source must be buried, but it's still functional. Kor leaned close to one of the panels, tapping it with a blade edge. It responded by blooming into a field of shifting geometric patterns. Circles within spirals, lines that moved like fluid logic. Data, but not in any language their suits could translate. Then came the whisper, not through their comms, but directly into their heads, each of them hearing it differently, as though shaped by memory. For Yurik, it sounded like a long-forgotten command voice. For Valari, it echoed with her mentor's cadence. For the twins, it was a child song from the minds where they were born. All different, all wrong. Did you hear that? Valari whispered, eyes wide behind her visor. We all did, Yurik said. No one moved for a long moment. Then the lights pulsed again, and one of the side doors, until now seamless, slid open with a hiss. Beyond it, darkness. Unlit, but not silent. There was something deeper in the ship, moving, slowly, deliberately. Yurik hesitated, only a breath. We're not alone here. Finn took a step back. We shouldn't be here at all. We need to understand what this is, Valari said, her voice tight but steady. What if it's a warning? What if whatever happened here is still happening? Kor stepped toward the open door, peering into the void. Then it never stopped. Yurik turned to his team, prepared to go deeper. Minimal interference, full documentation. If this ship holds answers, we find them. But if it's a trap, he didn't finish. He didn't need to. The air around them grew colder, the vibration stronger, and somewhere deep in the bowels of the ship, something let out a long, low creak, like a door opening in a house that hadn't been entered in centuries. They looked at one another, weapons half raised, uncertain whether to go forward or flee. But retreating now wouldn't change the fact that they'd awakened something. And it knew they were here. Yurik stepped through the threshold, and one by one, the others followed. Behind them, the door slid shut. The passage behind the sliding door narrowed quickly, forcing the team to walk in single file. The walls here were smoother, almost slick, like glass covered in condensation. Faint glimmers of iridescent light moved under the surface, following their progress like phantoms behind a mirror. The air grew heavier with each step, not toxic, just dense, charged with pressure that made breathing feel slightly wrong. Yurik kept his weapon trained ahead, each movement controlled, precise. His mind cataloged every irregularity, but even his disciplined thoughts couldn't ignore the oppressive atmosphere creeping into his chest. Behind him, Valari ran her gloved fingers along the wall, her instruments long since muted by whatever force now pulsed through the ship. She didn't need readings anymore. The ship itself was responding to them, observing them. Not alive, but not dead either. Kor and Finn took the rear, their usual stoicism fraying around the edges. Finn's fingers twitched against the safety latch of his plasma rifle. Kor's eyes never stopped moving, flicking over every panel and seemed as though expecting something to emerge at any second. They no longer spoke. The silence was too loud to interrupt. The corridor curved downward, leading them into a domed chamber far beneath the ship's central hull. What lay before them was not what anyone expected. Dozens of pods lined the walls, transparent and upright, filled with a thick, dark fluid. Inside each floated a figure, humanoid in shape but distorted. Elongated skulls, narrow torsos, arms folded tightly across their chests as if sleeping. Or bound. Valari stepped forward, her voice barely above a whisper. Suspended animation? No, Yurik said. These are containment cells. As if to confirm, a flicker of energy crackled across one of the pods. The being inside shuddered, not from life, but from something residual, an echo of torment. Kor leaned in, gaze narrowing. They were locked in, he said. Not preserved. Sealed. A flicker pulsed through the room, and the central dais in the chamber lit up, projecting a ghostly, three-dimensional image into the air. A series of alien figures stood in a circle, surrounding one of the creatures from the pods. Their forms were translucent and shaky, the recording corrupted with age. One figure raised its hands. A chant echoed, distorted, haunting. The creature in the center screamed. No sound, just a visual agony etched into its spasming body before its image collapsed and the pod slammed shut around it. The hologram looped over and over, faster with each cycle, until Yurik stepped forward and raised his clawed hand. Off! The projection vanished. The chamber dimmed again. Valari turned to him, her expression unreadable behind the reflective faceplate. This ship wasn't just a vessel. It was a prison. Or a tomb, Finn said. And we've disturbed it, Kor added. Yurik's gaze lingered on the pods. We need to access the data core. If there's a reason this ship was left here, we need to understand it before we do anything else. Valari hesitated. Assuming we're not already too late. They retraced their steps, finding a narrow passage leading deeper into the vessel. The architecture shifted subtly, no longer smooth and curved, but angular, almost ritualistic. Symbols etched into the metal glowed faintly, responding to their presence. They entered a circular room, its ceiling domed with crystalline structures that shimmer with impossible geometry. In the center stood a pedestal. Upon it rested a spherical device, cracked and flickering with pale blue light. Valari approached cautiously, extending a tethered interface cable from her suit. I don't know if this will work, she said. The tech is layered. It's more than code. Some of this feels biological. She touched the sphere. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, in a sudden pulse of energy, the room came alive. Walls lit with streams of cascading data, symbols and sound overlapping in chaotic harmony. Their visors darkened to filter the light, and the device began transmitting directly into their suits. Images, words, pain. They staggered under the assault of sensation. A war not of armies, but of ideas. A being or consciousness, fragmented into thousands of forms, seated across stars. One ship, a sanctuary, a vault, meant to trap one fragment. But something went wrong. The entity adapted, consumed the crew, twisted the ship itself into a labyrinth of misdirection. Valari yanked the cable free, falling to her knees. It's not just alive, she said. It's awake. The lights dimmed as the data stream collapsed. Yurik moved her aside, pulling her to her feet. Can it escape? I don't know, she whispered. I think it already has. A tremor shuddered through the deck beneath them. Not an engine, not mechanical. Breathing. They ran. The corridors had changed. Where once the path was straight, it now bent in impossible angles, forcing them to loop back to the chamber of pods. But the pods were no longer sealed. One stood open, the fluid drained, its occupant gone. Something was loose. Yurik raised his weapon. We move as one. No hesitation. A distant scrape echoed through the corridor. Another tremor. Then laughter. Low, hollow, echoing off the walls of a cadence that did not belong to any living throat. The team fell silent, pressed back to back in the flickering dark. The pod chamber's lights blinked out, one by one, until only a dim glow from the pedestal remained. Something moved in the shadows beyond their lights. Watching, waiting. The signal that brought them here began again, louder this time, echoing from the ship's walls. It wasn't calling for help. It was calling others. The glow from the pedestal flickered one final time and died, plunging the chamber into complete darkness. The only light came from the dull glow of the team's visor HUDs, barely enough to illuminate a few feet in any direction. The silence that followed was not empty. It was alert, anticipating. Yurik kept his rifle raised, every joint in his frame tense to snapping. The laughter had stopped. That was worse. Noise could be traced. Fought. Silence meant concealment. Strategy. He activated a wideband ping on his suit, a soft pulse that spread through the chamber like sonar. It rebounded. Slow. Uneven. Something large was moving. Valari crouched beside the edge of the pod dais, her breathing ragged inside her helmet. Her eyes darted across her interface, running diagnostics that returned nothing usable. The ship had severed all remaining links to their equipment. It wasn't blocking them. It was learning from them, absorbing the architecture of their tech to twist it against them. Kor and Finn moved like shadows, flanking Yurik. They held their rifles tight, but their fingers hovered just over the triggers. They'd seen what the pods contained. They knew how quickly this could escalate from horror to massacre. Kerr made a series of sharp clicks, subvocal, a silent language from childhood. Fun nodded once and peeled off to the left, disappearing into the dark. Too dangerous to split? Yurik hissed through comms. Too dangerous not to, Kor responded. We need to know what's hunting us. Valari tapped into her wrist console and blinked through corrupted displays. We're inside a construct with a corrupted intelligence, if you can call it that. This thing isn't just controlling the ship. It is the ship now. It mimics what it consumes. Is there a way to disable it? Yurik asked. Valari shook her head. Disabling might not mean anything anymore. We're past systems. This is neurological architecture, and it's infected. A shriek cut through the darkness. Fun's voice. Kor moved instantly, sprinting toward the sound, weapon raised. Yurik followed without hesitation, Valari close behind. The corridor curved again, its walls flexing slightly as if breathing in response to their movement. When they reached the intersection, Fun was on the ground, weapon discarded several meters away. He was still alive, gasping, clutching his helmet like it was trying to choke him. Yurik knelt and locked eyes with him. Report. Fun's eyes were wide. It touched me. It didn't attack, just touched. His voice cracked, filled with a terror not even battle had ever drawn from him. It knew my thoughts. I saw home. I saw us dying. Over and over. It's not a creature. It's memory. Pain. It's every fear we've ever buried. Kor retrieved his weapon. We can't fight it like this. It doesn't bleed. Valari dropped beside them. Then we don't fight it. We outthink it. We find its origin. There has to be a neural core, someplace it roots itself. Back to the bridge? Yurik asked. No, she said. Too exposed. Too artificial. Whatever this thing is, it was locked inside for a reason. There must be a quarantine zone, a failsafe. Every prison has a warden. They moved quickly, carrying from between them, until he regained enough control to walk. His gaze remained unfocused, haunted. Whatever had touched him had left something behind, something he couldn't explain, but he kept moving. The corridors continued to shift as they advanced. Walls were formed behind them, erasing paths. Doorways became mirrors. Mirrors became eyes. They no longer tried to map their path. The ship had become recursive, coiling around itself like a serpent devouring its own tail. But Volari's instincts guided them, not by logic, but by contradiction. Wherever the light seemed most stable, they went the opposite way. Wherever the ship tried to guide them, they resisted. Eventually, they arrived at a chamber unlike the others, cold, matte black, with no lighting, no interface. It was a dead zone. No power, no movement. Valari let out a breath. This is it. The only room the ship isn't watching. In the center stood a single device, cylindrical, covered in symbols similar to those from the earlier holograms. Valari approached cautiously, hands trembling. This isn't tech. It's biological containment, organic encryption, maybe even psychic. That's why the ship doesn't come in here. It can't interface with whatever this is. Yurik studied the device. Is it a power source? Valari shook her head. No, it's a lock. Kor's gaze hardened. So we unlock it? No, she said quickly. We reinforce it. If this thing got loose once, it can do it again. But if I can sync our suit frequencies to its locking field, maybe I can reinforce the seal. If it still works. Fun leaned against the wall, his face pale, voice barely audible. It's in here with us. They turned. One of the walls rippled. A shape emerged, tall, semi-transparent, vaguely humanoid but shifting, like light caught in water. No eyes, no mouth, just presence. And then a voice, not heard but felt, a wordless push into their thoughts. You opened the door. The lights inside their helmets flickered. Their oxygen feed surged briefly, then leveled. The entity took a step forward, though it didn't move so much as manifest again, closer. Yurik aimed his weapon. Back. Now. The being halted, not out of fear, out of interest. Valari pressed her hands to the cylinder, murmuring rapidly in her native tongue. Her voice was calm, but her fingers trembled. I need 30 seconds. The being tilted its head, not mockery, calculation. Its form flickered and split, dividing into mirrored versions of itself, each taking a step toward a member of the team. Core fired first. The bolt passed through the being without resistance, striking the wall behind. Non-corporeal, Yurik muttered. Or a projection. The creature moved again, faster now. Not walking, phasing. It surged toward Fun. He screamed. And then silence. The being stopped, inches from him. It did not touch him. But Fun's scream cut off not because he was silenced, but because he was emptied. His body sagged forward, eyes dull, every trace of self removed in an instant. Yurik shouted, "Valari, now!" The device pulsed. A wave of force erupted outward. Not light, not heat, but presence. The being recoiled, not in pain, in resistance, as though being pulled backward. It surged forward once more, trying to reach them, but the chamber began to constrict. Walls closed inward. Reality folded. Valari screamed through connection. "It's working. It's—" The being reached for her. Core leapt into its path. He didn't touch it. He simply stood there. And then nothing. Core was gone. The creature vanished. So did the chamber's edges. The locked device flared once, then darkened, completely inert. Yurik collapsed to his knees. Fun was gone. Core was gone. Valari slumped beside the pedestal, hands still resting against its cool surface. Her eyes were dry, but the grief was unmistakable. "We didn't kill it," she said. "We just closed the door again." Yurik looked at the black ceiling above them. "And what happens when someone else opens it?" She didn't answer. They were alone in the silence. Again, and the ship, somewhere above, waited with its infinite corridors and dead voices. The way back was not the same. Yurik had memorized the routes, at least what little of them could be trusted, but the corridors were no longer recognizable. What once bent with curved elegance now shifted at rigid angles. The ship had changed, again, not just in shape, but in temperament. It wasn't playing anymore. It was studying. He and Valari moved in silence, what was left of their team reduced to a grim pairing of survival and necessity. Their suits buzzed with background interference. The AI assistants, designed for guidance and health regulation, had gone mute. The data Valari had extracted from the locked chamber burned in her wrist pad, encrypted and unstable, but intact. Whatever it contained, it had cost them Fun and Core. No bodies, no remains, just memory or the impression of it, hanging in the stale, electric air. Valari walked several steps ahead, head down, running diagnostics with deliberate speed. Her movements were brisk, efficient, but lacking the confident curiosity she once exuded. Yurik watched her from behind, noting the subtle stiffness in her spine, the tremor in her left hand she thought he couldn't see. She hadn't said a word about Core. She didn't need to. They all knew what he'd done. He didn't die trying to fight. He died buying time. They came to an intersection where the walls formed an organic Y, pulsing faintly like veins lit by distant stars. Valari stopped, raising a clenched fist, old military signal for halt. Yurik froze. "What is it?" he asked, voice low. She didn't answer immediately. Her visor turned slowly toward one corridor. "I think we're being led." Yurik's fingers tightened on his rifle. "To what?" "To an ending," she said. "Maybe not ours." He stepped beside her, angling his head toward the passage. The air there shimmered slightly, heatless but untrustworthy. It reminded him of the desert on Rocket Prime, where the sky lied and the horizon shifted just to mock your eyes. "We don't have time for riddles." "We don't have time for anything," she replied. Still, they moved forward, one step at a time, the corridor narrowing until their shoulders grazed the walls. Light danced at the edges of their vision, subtle and mocking. Sometimes they thought they saw reflections, versions of themselves walking beside them in silence, inverted, blurred. Then the walls opened into another chamber, smaller this time. At its center stood a simple console, clean and silent. No runes, no lights, no glowing symbols. just a single crystalline shard embedded in its surface. It pulsed faintly as they approached. "This wasn't here before," Valari whispered. Yurik circled the console, inspecting every corner. "The ship built it?" "No," she said slowly. "It wants us to think that." The shard pulsed brighter. Yurik reached out, but Valari caught his wrist. "Not yet," she said. "Let me try something first." She detached a secondary device from her belt, a neural tap, and placed it carefully beside the shard. It interfaced automatically, forming a web of light that hovered above the crystal like gossamer strands in gravity-less air. "What's it saying?" Yurik asked. Valari narrowed her eyes, watching as data flowed into her visor. "It's a failsafe, or a message left behind. A warning." "From who?" She hesitated. "The original builders of the prison. Before the infection." The crystal flared again and the room darkened. A holographic projection burst from the device. But this time, it didn't show torture or containment or alien rituals. It showed stars, galaxies, then one system, small, burning blue, and then a fleet, countless ships converging on a singular, rotating object, a black obelisk at the edge of space. Then the voice came, cold, distant, ancient. "This is the last record of the Singularity Custodians. The entity has breached dimensional integrity. All known anchors failed. This vessel, Prison 9, A Delta, is the final point of resistance. If you are seeing this, the stars faded. The projection focused now on a single figure. Humanoid, cloaked in armor, eyes devoid of color. You are too late." The image glitched, then cut off. The crystal cracked. Valari stepped back. "We weren't the first ones to stumble here. Just the first in a long time." Yurik holstered his rifle. "So what now?" "We walk out of here and warn someone." Valari gave him a look. "And who exactly do we warn? The consortium? The collective? They'll just try to use it. Harness it. Like the last ones. Then we destroy it," he said. Valari studied the remains of the crystal. "That thing's not something we can kill. But maybe we can isolate it again." "How?" She looked at him, eyes clear, jaw set. "We trap ourselves with it." Yurik flinched. "That's not a plan." "It's the only way left," she said. "We become the lock. Reconfigure the fail-safe signature to bond with our biosignatures. Once it detects our life signs, it'll re-engage the containment field, stronger this time. That means no one leaves." "It means no one else dies," she said. Yurik looked around the chamber. It felt final, as if this room had waited millennia just for this moment, for this decision, for them. The ship wasn't just a prison. It was a trial. It tested will, sacrifice, understanding. And now, the test had reached its end. Valari moved to the pedestal and started reconfiguring the neural tap. There's a chance, small, that it can hold. If it doesn't, the energy backlash will fry everything within a 10-kilometer radius, including us. Yurik sighed. "At least we'll go out doing something that matters." He moved beside her, fingers brushing over the crystalline core. A warmth spread through his palm. Not heat, but recognition. The ship knew him now. It accepted the terms. A sound echoed down the corridor behind them. Soft footsteps. Then a voice, low, familiar. "Core." But they didn't turn. They didn't need to. The ship had one more trick left. A last attempt to unmake resolve. Valari pressed the final sequence. The room brightened. Walls folded inward. And then, silence. Pure. Absolute. And somewhere in the dark heart of space, a signal that had echoed for millennia finally fell quiet.